Hey everyone, welcome back to Notier's Frontiers Diaries. In the last episode, we kind of had our last hurrah in Guatemala. And in this episode, we'll be saying goodbye to the incredible country of Guatemala and heading through the next two countries in Central America, El Salvador and Honduras. El Salvador, when you're going through Central America, you can actually, if you wanted to, skip El Salvador, but that's not something we wanted to do. We wanted to experience that country if we could. But Honduras has coast on both sides, the Atlantic and the Pacific. So you do have to go through Honduras.
And both of those, and everything's with a grain of salt, but like both of those countries were like the iffiest countries of Central America, you know.
When it comes to safety.
Yeah, you know, Marisa used to be a teacher long ago, and she had a lot of like refugee students from El Salvador.
Yeah,
you know,
they were mostly from a town called Zacatecoluca. And I had always dreamed of going past there, but at the same time, I heard a lot of their first-hand account stories of their time there and some of the violence that they fled. And so, you know, I had that in the back of my mind as we headed into El Salvador.
Yeah, I mean, there's bad parts of every country, and we know that from, you know, where we're from and rah. So it's not an overall giant boo on the country by any means, but you know, we just knew that we'd have to be a little bit more careful and safe, and you know, just...
That's right. Also, this was the very beginning of our trip still, and we didn't have that much experience behind us yet of traveling the world on a motorcycle. And so this was the first real area of the world that we felt like, are we crazy for doing this? Now, looking back on
it was rookie stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine, but at the time, you know, my nervousness was quite high.
It's always good to have a level of caution.
Yeah.
You know, and just a little fun fact, El Salvador translates to the Savior. Mm-hmm. And with the job I used to work at, I used to work for Doug Lord and David Salvatore, and I was the inside sales manager, and I had 11 people underneath me, so there's 12 of us. And I would tell them all, I said, we work for the Lord and the Savior, and one day one of us is going to betray them. And it was me.
It was you.
And it was awesome.
Because you had to quit to go on this amazing trip.
Yes. But
well, yeah.
it was a good life choice upon reflection. But
so yes, we will never forget what El Salvador means.
Yeah.
And Honduras means the depths. So it was interesting because not just a few days before, we were in the highlands of Guatemala. We were up nearly 10,000 feet high. So we were going from the heights to the depths of Honduras. And as we lowered ourselves in altitude, going in towards El Salvador and Honduras, you could definitely feel it got hotter and hotter and hotter. was a really nice colonial town in El Salvador. It had a beautiful church. It also has some ruins next to it that we visited called Tazumal. And they were the last of the Mayan ruins that we visited in Central America, kind of like the most southern Mayan ruins that they have. And we visited it. It's a smaller ruin. I think we'd gotten a bit jaded from all the other really big, massive ruins that we'd seen.
And a lot of it surely wasn't a grand finale by any means, because like a lot of it was, it just wasn't as grand. But like they had poured a lot of concrete, like it's seemingly like directly on it without like patchwork or whatever, but they're like, let's preserve this structure, so here's 8 tons of concrete.
Yeah, but, it had been completely concreted over.
It was still beautiful. And like what I refer to it as like if you just have gone through the Amazon on like a riverboat tour, and like, you know, there's a bazillion different plant lives and this, that, and the other thing, and then you go into like, you know, your
neighbor's greenhouse.
Yeah, you know, it's like, so your neighbor's greenhouse is beautiful, so don't poo-poo on that. But we had just seen all this amazing. Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
It was just expectations, I suppose. But you know, right next to it, and we'd passed a bunch of these. Was a cemetery.
Yeah, I remember taking pictures through the little leakage.
And they were so colorful. Yeah. All the gravestones were raised, and it's just kind of beautiful, I think. I always enjoyed looking at the different colors and ornamentation that they would put in the cemeteries out there. And the next morning, we climbed up the bell tower of that amazing church and got views of the whole city.
Mm-hmm. I felt like, you know, I don't know how many people have played Assassin's Creed, but when like you climb all the way to the top, and then it's like new area unlocked, you know. We didn't do the jump into a hay barrel, but it was really beautiful, and it was cool that, I mean, they let you in like, you know, this little medieval spiral staircase thing in the corner of it, and it was fun. Yeah.
We moved along the way to the capital city of El Salvador called San Salvador. And it's a big city, and we rented a room in a little hotel there that had advertised having a pool and stuff. Yes. We were so excited. It was so hot in El Salvador. And we got there, and we really liked this place because it had this kind of old, maybe it had been super grand back in the day, but it had this charm to it, a little bit rustic now and run down. But
well, it was like, you know, Pablo Escobar's like ranch back in the heyday of his cocaine, you know, madness, and then it has all gone to absolute, you know, diminishedness. But it was
now
still,
you can afford it.
But now we can afford it. And in El Salvador, they use U.S. dollar.
Right.
So everything, my brain can finally process, you know, transactions. But, you know, and they were like, do you want the expensive room or do you want the cheap room? And our answer is always, give us the cheap room. Yes. And so, you know, we got the room down in the corner, but it had air con, it had air conditioning.
It was great.
And they had a pool.
They had a pool.
And so we got into our swimsuits and ran out by the pool. And it was just kind of like the rest of everything, like maybe a decade or 2 decades or maybe even 3 decades ago. It was beautiful. It would have been awesome.
That was probably the last time they cleaned it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't even put my big toe in there because it might just like sizzle away to the bone, you know. But
yeah, we immediately were like, okay, well, the shade will be good. But then we ordered shakes.
We're sitting by the pool, and then like the pool guy comes out with his little net, and he's just collecting like seaweed and slime. And I was like, dude, don't even bother. There's nothing you could do that will make me go into that pool. That is the Toxic Avengers birthplace, swamp thing. But they did have, as you were alluding to,
right, these milkshakes there. We were like, all right, milkshakes, let's order that.
They were like $1 each.
Oh, you could hear them making it like it was all made fresh right there. Those were the best milkshakes of my life.
We were there for less than like 8 hours, and I think I had 8 strawberries. And they also had $4 steak dinners with like mashed potatoes and
big
stuff.
Steaks and we definitely felt like living like kings out there.
And queens.
Yes, and queens. It was just a great stay in San Salvador.
It was really, really nice.
So from San Salvador, we headed through the rest of El Salvador, and we passed by that town where I had many students who had been from this place called Zacatecoluca. They have beautiful volcanoes all throughout there. In fact, all of El Salvador is just covered in volcanoes. There's so many. There's also a lot of beaches in El Salvador, which unfortunately we didn't get to see. We were really rushing through in a way because I had all of these fears, and we were going pretty fast.
I would say we had all of these nervousnesses.
Yes.
If that's a word.
Nervousnesses. And I think a lot of them were unfounded, because we met people later on that had spent, weeks on the beaches of El Salvador and hiking through forests and just having a great time. And we missed all that due to our fears.
Our nervousness.
Our nervousness.
I fear nothing. They call me No Fear Notier.
Yes. But I was full of nervousnesses.
Yes.
And so that is a little bit of a shame.
Yeah.
But maybe one day we'll go back. Who knows? We headed into Honduras, and Honduras has this small section that reaches the Pacific Ocean that we had to go through. But at the time, there were actually a few good reasons not to spend too much time in Honduras, because they had just had a contested election and there were a lot of protests and roadblocks going on. So we decided to, again, go very quickly through the country, and that is also quite a shame, because I've heard incredible things about Honduras. So there are street dogs everywhere in Latin America, just lots of dogs all over the place, and for the most part they're extremely friendly and wonderful, but they do like to pee on things.
Yeah.
So when we go to borders, we were with Phil and Sepna, which was great because we like to travel through international borders with other people, greater strength in numbers. Also, you can have some people standing by the motorcycles, watching them as other people are doing paperwork. It's just great.
Not only that, but I don't speak Spanish very well, so if Marissa's watching the bike and I have to go by myself, she always does the paperwork first. And then I go up there and I'm like, mismo de otro blanca woman,
like the
you know?
same.
The same as the other girl, you know? But,
so this was really great. And it was my turn to watch over the motorcycles as everyone else was doing paperwork.
No, Sepna was with you.
Ah, yes, Sepna was with me. And foolish me, but I'd gotten into the bad habit of putting my helmet on the ground. And I have a modular helmet. And I didn't want to strap it to the bike or anything and have it fall off and get really hot on the motorcycle. So I put it in the shade near the motorcycle because it was a zillion degrees out and my helmet is black. And it was open like a perfect little urinal. And a dog came along and I saw the dog and it was like slow motion. I was like, no.
She was hugging the shade of the building and all of our stuff was, 20 feet away, 10 feet away. Yeah, and I was inside the building talking with Phil and I'm like, dude, that dog is totally going to piss right into Marissa's helmet. He's like, oh no, you should want her.
And I'm like no. It didn't matter. That dog had peed all up inside my helmet. So the border between Guatemala and El Salvador did not have all sorts of facilities. It didn't have bathrooms or a sink or water.
We had wet ones.
We had wet ones, but that wasn't going to be enough. I mean, the pads of my helmet had really gotten soaked with dog piss. So there really wasn't much to do. I only had a little bit of water left in my water bottle. But I took it and kind of dumped it in and squeezed the pads as best as I could. And when we finished with the border,
she had the grumpiest face ever.
I had to put on the helmet
McGee.
and ride for at least another 2 hours with it on. Finally, we got to a hotel and I took it off gratefully and washed it.
And washed the heck out of it. So a couple just fun facts, right? And this episode's all about fun facts. But leaving your motorcycle helmet on the ground is actually a sign of distress. So if another motorcyclist goes by, he knows that you're hurt or something. So that is another reason why not to. And yet another reason, like even going all across the states, I would put my helmet on the ground all the time. Like roly-polies would get into them, like weird little creatures. Fire ants will crawl up in there.
In Africa, in Botswana, I had termites make an entire termite colony within my helmet.
Yeah. So but the reason why we started putting on the ground again is because when we went to go see a ruin. And
someone had knocked the bike over.
Yeah, well, we used to put the helmets on either side of the handlebars, but people get really curious about the bike, and so when we're gone, like people will be like, "Oh, take a picture of me on it." Well, we're not there, and they will have no idea that it's 800,000 million pounds with a center of gravity that's only 3 degrees to either side.
5 feet tall. Yes.
And so they'll jump on, they'll knock over, and then that crushes the helmet.
Right.
So it's a very the smartest thing we do now is we put it on the center of the motorcycle.
Yeah,
so,
and that prevents people from getting on it and things like that.
If creatures crawling into it, or if, the bike takes a nap because the wind is crazy,
or dogs peeing in it.
Dogs peeing it. So use all of that information to decide whatever you want to do with your helmet.
That's right. That he actually spent a long time, a good portion in El Salvador and Honduras messing around, which we did not, sadly. Yeah. But
when we had a conversation back in Guatemala over a couple beers, we were drinking, and we were discussing what it actually took to say that you traveled to a country, because a lot of people fly in over like layovers, or some people, we knew we were burning and turning through these two countries, and it's like, you can't just spend a day driving through it and then say, hey, I've been to El Salvador or Honduras. And so we made a golden rule, or a brown rule maybe, that said in order to say you've been to a country, you've had to have at least one bowel movement.
I think that's a good rule.
I think it's a good rule. But it gets weird because there's gray areas, or more brown areas, if you will. But because then by our own rules, I had been to Honduras.
And I haven't.
And she hadn't. So, and she was on the same bike, so I don't know. It's weird.
That is very weird.
This is true.
Yeah, but we just stayed very briefly in a hotel in this one town, and we went to dinner there, and we really had a great time that very short amount of time that we were in Honduras. It was a wonderful meal. We'd already had some pupusas, which are these wonderful kind of like filled tortilla type things that you can eat with all different sauces.
Well, and her kids that she used to teach were like, oh, when you go to Honduras, you have to try the pupusa,
Yes.
And, so.
In El Salvador, it's famous for their pupusas. So they have great food, and it is a shame that we weren't able to explore more. So we had a brief but still very impactful time through El Salvador and Honduras, and it does definitely make us want to go back one day.
Yeah.
And from there, we headed off to the next country in Central America, which was Nicaragua. And in that country, we were going to spend a lot of time.
That was a blast.
Tons of exploring.
That was fun.
So that will begin in the next episode. Goodness.
Come on, buddy.
Yeah, come on, Mo. It's okay.
You can cut it out or not. I don't care, but you're good, dude. Yes, you guys.
So thank you so much for watching. I hope you liked this episode. If you did, please give us a thumbs up and hit the subscribe button below. Ding ding. And we'll be seeing you next time.
Stay safe, everybody.
Bye.
Peace.